The last thing I expected when I pulled into my driveway that afternoon was to find a stranger's Lexus parked in my spot. Actually, two cars, a BMW and a Lexus, both unfamiliar. Both parked like the drivers didn't expect to be interrupted. I was supposed to be out of town until Sunday night, a client retreat in Raleigh. But the event got canceled last minute. Some executive had a breakdown, and I decided to surprise Susan by coming home early and taking her to our favorite restaurant. I even picked up flowers. Tulips, her favorite. When I unlocked the front door, the silence was deafening. No welcome. No TV murmuring from the living room. Just clothes. A trail of them. A high heel tipped over by the shoe rack. A man's blazer. A red blouse I bought her in Charleston for our anniversary, crumpled on the floor like garbage. I didn't say a word. I didn't call out. I just stood there, heart jackhammering, my body frozen while my mind screamed every warning it could. Upstairs. Something was happening upstairs. The sound started faint at first, then unmistakable. Breathless moaning. Guttural laughter. Wet slaps. My legs moved on their own. I walked like a ghost through the wreckage of my life. Past the wine bottle on the kitchen counter, past the 2 used glasses, past the photographs of our wedding still framed on the wall. The door to the master bedroom was open halfway. And what I saw, I still don't fully know how to describe it. My wife, Susan, was on her hands and knees, her wedding ring glinting under the ceiling fan. 3 men surrounded her. One of them was Jeff Davis, her boss. The one she always swore was just an overbearing jerk. Another I recognized vaguely from the tennis club. The third I didn't know and didn't care to. I wasn't sure if I screamed or just collapsed against the wall. None of them noticed me at first. I had my phone out recording, my hand shaking, so hard the footage would be useless for anything except proof of what I was seeing. My wife didn't even flinch when Jeff slapped her backside and said, "Your husband ever do that to you?" She just laughed and said, "He can't even look me in the eye." I remember the taste of bile in my mouth. I remember the surreal calm that followed, the kind you feel when something inside you dies. I turned and walked back downstairs, my ears roaring like a jet engine. In the garage, I found my toolkit. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I removed the distributor caps from all 3 of their cars. That would keep them grounded for a while. Then I went into Susan's purse and took her keys, wallet, phone. I texted her from my own phone. "Dinner's ready. Come downstairs." I locked the front door and waited outside, heart pounding like a war drum. The moment her naked, disheveled body burst out onto the porch, mascara smeared, hair wild, I hit the button. Locks clicked, door shut, and I walked to the curb with her phone in my hand, knowing one thing with complete clarity. My marriage died in that bedroom. And now, I was going to bury it properly. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I barely sat still. I paced the house like a ghost, adrenaline still drumming through my chest, body twitching from the whiplash of heartbreak and rage. The bedroom smelled like betrayal. The sheets were soaked in other men. I stripped them off with rubber gloves and dumped them into a trash bag like biohazard waste. I didn't even cry. Not really. The tears came in short, dry bursts, more like spasms. My heart felt shredded, but my mind had shifted. I wasn't the man who brought home tulips anymore. I was the man who now had a job to do. I went to the basement, opened the gun safe, took out the Glock. Not because I intended to use it, but because the night was unpredictable. If one of those men decided to get aggressive, or Susan tried anything wild, I wanted to be ready. I slid the magazine in, racked it once, and set it down on the coffee table beside me. Then I emptied the contents of their wallets. Names, business cards, photos of their kids. One of them had a church pamphlet folded in half. I snorted. By 7 a.m., I called the police. I didn't say it was a domestic dispute. I said I suspected my wife had been coerced or abused by multiple men in our home while I was away. I had recordings, I told them. They said officers would be en route. That's when I set the stage. I called Susan from her own phone and said, "Hey, come inside. We need to talk. It's urgent." She didn't hesitate. Moments later, she was at the door, shivering in a blanket, mascara dried to her cheeks like war paint. She started to speak, but I opened the door just long enough to toss her clothes at her feet, then shut it again. "I called the police. I said calmly through the door. Told them a woman was assaulted here last night. You might want to be honest when they arrive. That's when the panic hit her. She began pounding on the door, screaming my name, sobbing, trying to convince me it was all consensual. That it was a mistake, and just sex, and that she never meant to hurt me. She didn't even ask if I was okay. When the police arrived, I showed them the footage. I gave the officer names, ID copies from the wallets, even the timestamps on my camera roll. The lead officer turned to Susan and asked, point blank, if she'd been coerced. Her silence lasted just long enough to spark hope in me. But then she whispered, no. It was all consensual. The officer looked back at me with raised brows and handed me back the phone. That was it. No arrests. No consequences. Just an official note in a file somewhere that Bobby Grant's wife liked to host orgies in their home while he was out trying to provide a decent life. After the cops left, I invited Susan in, not to stay, but to watch me throw out her clothes piece by piece. Lingerie, shoes, jackets, everything into the yard. She screamed, tried to stop me, but I didn't touch her. Didn't even raise my voice. Then I went upstairs, took a hammer to the bed frame, splintering the headboard like it was made of matchsticks. The mattress went out the window. That night, I didn't just sleep on the couch. I started copying files from her laptop. Photos, emails, PDFs. I unlocked her phone with her birthday, still stupid enough to use something I knew, and found saved text threads, videos, even calendar invites labeled with brunch with Jeff face blowing a kiss at. I saw her entire second life unfolding in front of me, screen by screen. She didn't even bother to delete them. So I made copies. All of it. I spent the next 2 nights living off black coffee and the dim glow of computer screens. Every click of the mouse was like peeling back another layer of my own skin. By the 3rd folder I opened, my hands were shaking so badly I had to press them flat against the desk just to stop. I wasn't even sure why I was still digging. Maybe some masochistic part of me needed to see the full scope. Maybe I wanted to burn out every ounce of naivete left in me. The videos were endless. Dozens of them. Different men. Different settings. Some in our own bed. Some in the back offices of her workplace. Some at a friend's house. Even a couple in public places like hotel elevators. She recorded them all like trophies. Her face was never ashamed. She stared into the camera like a performer. I clicked through each one, my stomach a knot, nausea coming in waves. When I stumbled into the folder labeled Future Plans, I thought maybe it was some vacation itinerary. Instead, it was the real gut punch, a PDF list of assets she wanted in a divorce settlement, bullet points with dollar amounts next to my name. I opened an email chain between her and Sarah, the same friend who used to smile at me at cookouts, and read words that still burned behind my eyes. He's clueless. I'm going to take him for everything. Alimony, half the house, even the retirement account. Once I've got that squared away, I'm free. Jeff says he'll help me get a better lawyer than the one Ted used for his ex-LOL. And then a line that made my ears ring. I just hope Bobby keeps being the nice, stupid provider until then. I can't stand his face when he tries to be romantic. I pushed back from the desk, so hard the chair tipped over. For a long moment, I just stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched. My Glock sat on the table beside the laptop, silent and heavy like a dare. The thought flashed, just for a second, that there was an easier way to end all this. But the image of me in a cell, my daughter seeing me as a killer, Susan turning herself into some tragic widow on morning talk shows, it stopped me cold. I sat back down and forced myself to breathe. Slow. Measured. That's when resolve replaced rage. If she wanted to play chess, she had no idea I'd been learning to play for years. I wasn't going to touch her. I wasn't going to touch anyone. I was going to let her destroy herself with her own greed, her own recordings, her own emails. I was going to make sure the only thing left when she was done was the life she tried to discard. I started drafting notes, timelines, names, bank accounts, all the people who'd been in my home, all the times she'd used my money to finance her affairs. I printed screenshots, copied hard drives, uploaded everything to a private server under a pseudonym. Then I texted Tedworth, my old college roommate, and now one of the nastiest divorce lawyers in the county. We need to talk. Urgent. He called back within 5 minutes. I gave him the broad strokes. He whistled low. Bring everything. Don't tell her you're coming. I'll clear my afternoon. I closed the laptop and stared at my own reflection in the black screen. My face looked older, harder, like someone I didn't know yet. But I was ready to meet him. Tedworth hadn't changed much since college, except the suits got sharper and the smile more cynical. His office overlooked the courthouse, an intentional power move, he once told me, so clients could look out and see where their battles would be won. When I walked in carrying a duffel bag full of hard drives, printed emails, and a copy of our marriage certificate, he stood up, took one look at my face, and didn't say a word. He closed the door, locked it, and poured us both a glass of something amber from the shelf behind his desk. Talk, he said. I did. I laid it all out. The affair, the group sex, the videos, the email to Sarah, the list of assets she wanted to take from me like some parasitic settlement plan. His eyes didn't blink once. When I handed him the flash drive and he plugged it into his laptop, it took all of 10 seconds of footage before he leaned back and whistled. Well, Bobby, he said slowly, your wife's been busy. He poured himself another drink and started sketching on a legal pad. You said one of the men was Jeff Davis. That's her boss. Yeah, I said. And the other was a client from the tennis club. I found photos. Emails. He's married too. Kids. Jesus, Ted muttered. This is a nuclear bomb. It was then that my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring once, then silenced it. 10 seconds later, a voicemail popped up. I played it on speaker. Hey, Bobby, this is Bill Evans from the firm, Susan's boss's boss. He wanted me to reach out and see if you'd be open to a sit-down sometime this week. Totally informal, just, a chance to clear the air. No pressure. Ted grinned like a man who just spotted blood in the water. He doesn't know we've got evidence. This is good. This is very, very good. He flipped to a fresh page and started outlining a strategy. We're going to treat this like a RICO case. Systemic abuse, misuse of company resources, unsafe workplace behavior. They'll cave before we even reach court. What about Susan? I asked. She's the key. They have to keep her employed, or it looks like retaliation. But we'll make her untouchable, no promotion, no raises boxed in. Meanwhile, we go after Jeff for sexual harassment, Bill for cover-up, the client for moral misconduct if he holds any position of influence. I stared at him, stunned. You're not just talking divorce. Nope, Ted said with a grin. We're going scorched earth. I swallowed hard. It felt like revenge, but colder, cleaner. A surgery instead of a bar fight. He leaned forward. We'll start with Bill Evans. He wants a meeting. Good. We'll give him one. Bring a portable DVD player and the screenshots. Let him squirm. Let him realize what's about to happen. For the first time in days, I felt something close to power again. Ted sat back and tapped his pen against his chin. You know what the best part is, Bobby? I raised an eyebrow. We don't even have to lie. We scheduled the meeting for Wednesday afternoon. Bill Evans chose a sleek private conference room at his firm's downtown tower, likely expecting a quiet negotiation or, at worst, a teary-eyed husband begging for dignity. Instead, he got me, and Tedworth, dressed like a trial shark, toting a laptop bag and a portable DVD player. Bill greeted us with the thin smile of a man trying to pretend he's in control. Thanks for coming in, Bobby. I thought we could clear the air, maybe talk about Susan and, well, any misunderstandings. Sure, I said, sitting. Let's clear the air. Ted didn't waste time. He placed the DVD player on the table, popped in the disc, and pressed play. The screen came to life with a shot of Susan straddling Jeff Davis in what looked like the company's boardroom. Bill's face went blank. He blinked. Once. Twice. Ted paused it. We have more, he said evenly. Footage from your annual conference in Miami. The storage room at last month's charity gala. 3 clients' homes. Your firm's break room. I could go on. Bill looked like someone had vacuumed the air out of his lungs. What exactly are you looking for? We're looking for acknowledgement, Ted said, opening a folder. That your office became a brothel with a bonus structure. That you failed to act on complaints or suspicious behavior. That your employees, one of whom happens to be married to my client, used corporate property for sexual misconduct. Bill didn't respond, but his hands twitched as they gripped his pen. Ted continued. Jeff Davis is a liability. He needs to be removed. Susan remains in her position, untouched, publicly. And my client receives a settlement of $750,000 by month's end. Bill scoffed, but it was weak. That's blackmail. No, I said, speaking for the first time. That's evidence. And negotiation. You get to keep your firm's name out of headlines. No civil suits. No videos leaked. Your clients and board members don't see their names in a public record. Ted leaned back. Or we can file the complaint. Let discovery drag out in court. Let the media sniff around. I'm told your firm just renewed contracts with several banks. They'd love to know what they're funding. Bill sat back, face pale. Then he muttered, I'll need to speak with Jeff. Ted nodded. Bring him in. A few minutes later, Jeff Davis entered the room. He looked worse for wear, hollow-eyed, hungover. His gaze flicked to me and then the pause screen. What the hell is this? He asked. Ted pressed play again. Jeff turned gray. Jesus Christ, he muttered, backing toward the wall. We're here to resolve this, Ted said smoothly. Professionally. Quietly. Jeff looked at Bill, then at me. Look, man, I didn't know she never said she was unhappy. She didn't say much at all. I cut in. Except you were good at faking promotions. He flinched. Bill finally exhaled. Fine. Jeff's gone. Susan stays. I'll run this upstairs. You'll have an answer by Friday. We stood. No more meetings, Ted said. We send a formal agreement. You sign. You wire. Or we go nuclear. As we walked out, I glanced over my shoulder one last time at Jeff Davis, still sitting there with his hands in his lap, staring at the frozen screen. For the first time since that awful night, I felt something like balance begin to return. Not peace. Not yet. But leverage. And I was going to use every ounce of it. The Ace Tennis Club had always been Susan's escape. That's what she called it. Anyway, her sanctuary. I used to pay the annual membership fee with a smile, thinking I was supporting her social life, her self-care. Turns out, I was funding an upscale motel with a buffet of willing partners. Ted and I rolled up on a Saturday morning. He wore a polo shirt to blend in. I didn't bother pretending. We asked for Harry Riel at the front desk. He owned the place, silver-haired, smug, and always giving me that wink whenever Susan was around. At the time, I chalked it up to harmless charm. Now I knew better. Riel greeted us in his private office, a sun-drenched corner room with trophies lining the shelves and a giant portrait of himself holding a racket. Gentlemen, he said, shaking our hands with the fake enthusiasm of a used car dealer. What can I do for you? We're here about Susan Grant, Ted began, laying a manila envelope on his desk. Riel raised an eyebrow. Ah, the little vixen. The way he said it made my jaw tighten. Ted opened the envelope and slid out a few stills, screenshots taken from the locker room footage. Riel leaned forward, eyes narrowing. One frame showed Susan pinned against a row of lockers by a man I recognized. Tony, one of the club trainers. Another showed Riel himself, standing in the background, grinning like a creep. Jesus, he muttered, but there wasn't panic in his voice. Just irritation. Care to explain? Ted asked. Riel gave a lazy shrug. Adults blowing off steam. Happens all the time in these circles. You'd be shocked how many wives around here like to play off court. I clenched my fists, but Ted stayed calm. The footage was obtained legally. Your locker room doesn't have a no recording sign, and the camera was placed by one of your own staff, Susan, in fact. We've got hours of it. Riel rolled his eyes. So, she wanted it. You're mad your wife likes to party. She used my money, my home, and my trust, I said flatly. But we're not here to talk morals. We're here to talk liability. Ted leaned in. Tony is on your payroll. So is Susan's friend Cheryl, who appears in several of these videos. Your club's reputation, especially after that little drug scandal last year, is already on thin ice. Imagine what happens when this hits the news. Riel snorted. You wouldn't dare. You'd be humiliated right along with us. We're prepared for that, Ted said coolly. My client's already filed preliminary divorce motions. Public sympathy will be with him, especially after the footage surfaces anonymously. For the first time, Riel's smile cracked. What do you want? Tony's termination, an NDA, and a financial settlement of $500,000 for the reputational damage and the use of your facility to further acts that impacted my client's marriage. Riel barked a laugh. $500,000? For what? Because your wife's a freak. Ted didn't flinch. Because your freak show was filmed on private property and distributed across multiple devices. That makes you an accessory to reckless misconduct at best. At worst, a named defendant in a lawsuit that'll drag your club's name through every gossip rag from here to D.C. Riel leaned back, glowering. I'll consider it, he said. Don't take too long, I replied, standing. Tick-tock, Harry. As we walked out past the clay courts and sun-hatted housewives sipping cocktails at 11 a.m., I felt it again, that cold sense of balance. Every place Susan had defiled was going to be scrubbed with fire and leverage. I wasn't just cleaning up her mess anymore. I was reclaiming every inch of my life. The next week felt like the turning of a tide. For the first time since my world shattered, I wasn't drowning in humiliation. I was steering the current. Bill Evans called on Tuesday. The check's been wired, he said, voice flat and defeated. Jeff's been let go. Susan stays. No press. Are we done? I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him sweat, then replied, We're done when I say we're done. Click. Ted confirmed it later. $2.7 million. Wired into a newly created LLC under my control. Tax sheltered. Clean. By Thursday, 2 of the wealthier clients caught in the videos had quietly reached out through intermediaries. One was on the board of a local nonprofit. The other, a judge's brother. Each wired $1 million to make the footage disappear. By Friday, the total reached $4.7 million. Almost poetic. Susan tried to call 3 times that week. I didn't answer. Instead, I had my lawyer deliver a simple message. She could keep the house and the Lexus. No child support. Our daughter was already in college. No spousal support either. She signed the prenup years ago, likely thinking it was just paperwork. She'd mocked me in emails for being paranoid about assets. Now, it protected everything that mattered. The divorce filing was brutal. Ted wrote the opening brief like it was a manifesto, outlining each infidelity, each misuse of funds, each humiliating video clip. We filed publicly. No sealing of records. If Susan wanted attention, I was going to give it to her. In court, I didn't even look at her. She tried to speak to me once, whispered, Please, Bobby, as she passed by. I said only 2 words. Shut up, strumpet. The judge blinked. Ted smirked. Susan went pale. But the most satisfying blow came the following Monday. Harry Riel refused our settlement offer. Thought we were bluffing. Called it a scare tactic from a cuck with a grudge. So Ted filed the lawsuit. It exploded like dynamite. The footage went viral. Anonymous links found their way to the inboxes of members, donors, even the club's corporate sponsors. The locker room scene with Riel smirking in the background made headlines in regional outlets. By Wednesday, club membership plummeted. By Friday, 3 board members resigned. The settlement ballooned to $3 million. And Riel, under pressure from investors, was ousted from his own club. I didn't need to gloat. The headlines did it for me. Ace Tennis Club rocked by sex scandal, owner implicated in cover-up. High-powered attorney Ted Worth files civil suit on behalf of betrayed husband. Local woman at center of viral scandal files for divorce amid legal chaos. I didn't celebrate. I didn't go on a vacation or buy a new car. I sat on my back porch one night, bourbon in hand, staring at the silence of my empty home. The money felt hollow. The house felt big. But I had something Susan never would again, my name intact. It had been almost 3 years since the day I locked her out of our house. Since I dropped the flowers and picked up the phone. Life didn't go back to normal, because normal was dead. But it did settle into something quiet. Controlled. Mine. I saw her again by accident. I was at a steakhouse downtown, waiting for a business associate, when a voice behind me said, Bobby. I turned. There she was. Susan. Older. A little thinner. Dressed like money still poured in, though something in her eyes was dimmer. She wasn't alone. She clung to the arm of a tall man in a navy suit, expensive watch glinting as he pulled her close. This is Peter, she said, voice too bright. My fiancé. Peter held out a hand. I shook it slowly. He seemed decent, polished, but new to her orbit. Funny, I said. She used to wear that same smile when she introduced me to Jeff Davis. Her face stiffened. Peter chuckled awkwardly. I've heard a little about you. Susan said things ended poorly. I smiled. Depends who you ask. Susan shifted, eyes darting. Bobby don't. But I already had a folded envelope in my coat pocket. I handed it to Peter. Old email, I said. Might help answer a few questions you've been avoiding. He hesitated, glancing at her. She's changed, she said quickly. That's ancient history. Sure, I said. But just for fun. Peter, ask her 3 things later tonight. 1. Why she never keeps a phone past 6 months. 2. What really happened at the Ace Tennis Club. And 3. Why her laptop files are always encrypted. Peter's face was hardening. His grip loosened on her waist. I turned back to my table. As I sat down, I saw him whisper something to her. She tried to argue. He didn't raise his voice. Just placed the envelope on the table, picked up his coat, and walked out alone. Susan stood frozen in the middle of the restaurant, hands clenched at her sides, cheeks burning crimson as she turned to watch him leave. I sipped my drink. She looked at me one last time. No words. Just a look that asked why. I didn't answer. She'd spent years writing her own tragedy. I'd just been the one smart enough to keep the receipts. As the waiter approached, I handed him my card and said, add whatever the lady had. This'll be the last dinner she doesn't pay for. And with that, I left the restaurant, the past, and Susan behind. For good.